Good morning once again, good people of a great nation. It's a pleasure to have you join us for the first or in the two-part discussion segments lined up for us today. Just some few days ago, the president, Muhammadu Buhari, he bidded farewell to United Nations General Assembly. It was going to be his last. We call it ONGA 77. That's the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly. He was there. He made a very, a very introspective speech. And I have with me here international development expert and, highly sought after public affairs analyst, Dr. Matthew Adoyi Omale. He's the head of Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, based University of Abuja. You're welcome, Prof.
Good morning, Jide.
Let's start. What actually is the whole essence of having the United Nations General Assembly, so that our viewers will understand of what significance? In fact, somebody wrote in the Punch yesterday, United Nations of Talkers. I don't know whether that is appropriate to describe the United Nations General Assembly. But as the international relations expert here, what actually is United Nations, and why do we have United Nations General Assembly?
Well, the United Nations is the apex multilateral body that all countries of the world, the 193 countries of the world, belong. Once you are a sovereign country, one of the bases, according to the Montevideo Convention, for you to be recognized as a sovereign, political, independent entity, you have to belong to the Committee of Nations, which is the United Nations. So all sovereign countries on this planet Earth are members of the United Nations. And the United Nations is the body that helps to galvanize world security, that help to promote trade, that help to promote integration of the international community. Now, the United Nations has some key institutions, which the General Assembly is one of it, the Security Council, the Trusteeship, the Secretariat. So all these organs are to facilitate the effective functioning of the United Nations as a body. Now, one thing you should know is that you said that people were trying to say that the United Nations General Assembly is just a talk shop, or it's just I disagree with those people. The United Nations General Assembly, as one of the key organs of the United Nations, is a body that once in a year, the General Assembly brings together all the presidents of the world, all the prime ministers, all the leaders of each sovereign country into a platform to address global issues. So such a body, you cannot just wash it away by saying that it's just a mere talk shop. It affords the opportunity for all the countries of the world, through their leaders, to sit down in one particular place and take very critical decisions that affect everybody. So such a body is not just a mere talk shop.
Okay. So if it's not a talk shop, what significance is this annual ritual of meeting, deliberating, and you still have not been able to prevent global crisis? Look at the Ukraine versus Russia. The war has taken thousands of lives, and still counting. We do not know I mean, shouldn't the Security Council and the General Assembly been able to resolve this issue before it got into a full-blown crisis?
If you look at the Charter of the United Nations, the General Assembly performs certain functions. The Security Council has 5 permanent members: the UK, France, Russia, China, and so on.
And US.
And the US, United States. Now, the General Assembly elect or approve 10 other countries.
On rotational basis.
Yes, so 2 years to be part of the Security Council. So the General Assembly will approve those countries that will be in the Security Council for the next 2 years. So they perform other functions outside the talk shops. The Charter of the General Assembly gives them certain powers to take certain decisions that would lead to the smooth running of the United Nations as a body. Now, yes, definitely, the United Nations have carried on for the past 60 years. This talk shop that people refer to it. I can imagine a world without the United Nations. It does not mean that because the United Nations is set up, there will not be crisis. There will be conflict. But what we are saying is to mitigate, to try and resolve this conflict, you need a body like the United Nations. And to be fair to the United Nations, the United Nations have tried. They have intervened in a lot of countries. They have provided the enabling environment to ensure that conflicts are resolved, that issues are put to the front burner. We should not just look at Ukraine. The United Nations did a lot to avert the crisis in Ukraine. But again, the issue of veto, the Security Council couldn't take a definite stand because of the veto of Russia and China, and especially Russia being a member of the Security Council. So, yes, that's why a lot of reforms are still needed in the United Nations as a body. But we cannot take away the role the United Nations have played in trying to stabilize the international system, in trying to improve world global security and so on. If you recollect, the Arab-Israeli conflict was very swift.
The Yom Kippur War.
Yes, the Yom Kippur War. If you can also recollect, the United Nations has done a lot to wade into the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And several other conflicts across the globe. The United Nations have been supporting even regional arrangements, have been supporting the resolution of a lot of conflict, not just in Africa, in Asia and other parts of the world.
Prof, let's look at the issue around climate change and the United Nations. The United Nations, I read Guterres, speech, but the big boys within that system, they make commitment, COP22, COP this, COP that, but they are not. They observe all of these commitments in breach. And it's like, because they are the owners of the United Nations, those every effort to get them to behave, to reduce ozone layer depletion, to reduce greenhouse effect, and to bring about sustainable control of the climate is not yielding positive results. And I think that forms part of our president's speech at the UN, if my memory serves me right. People are concerned about the future of this planet Earth without, bringing some measure of control on the deleterious effect of industrialization on climate and all of that. So what's your take? How have you seen the United Nations tackle this climate change of a thing?
Yes, the United Nations have done a lot in trying to address issues of climate change, and it was also part of the Millennium Development Goal and the Sustainable Development Goal.
Yeah.
One of the key aspects of the SDGs and MDGs was the issue of climate change and switching from current using fossil fuel to renewable energy. A lot have been achieved globally in that regard, but still a lot still need to be done. You know, transition, you see the word that is being used.
Energy transition.
Yes, energy is transiting from what people are used to something that to a new, and it cannot just happen abruptly like that. For example, if you ban all vehicles that are using fossil fuel, where are what have we in the third world countries? How are we going to survive?
That does our budget on crude oil prices.
So it is not something, that is why it is a long period is being given. They was okay, by 2030, by 2050, this should happen, that should happen. We should eliminate even ordinary compressors and air conditioners. If you say now that in third world countries we should abolish the use of air conditioners or the use of refrigerators, you see the impact it is going to have. So it's a gradual process. The United Nations understand that we cannot throw the world into recession abruptly. In the advanced countries, a lot has been achieved, despite the fact that gas flaring has been stopped in a lot of countries. In the UK, in the US, a lot has been done in terms of outright pollution. But in third world countries like Nigeria, for example, go to the Niger Delta, gas is still being flared
up to tomorrow
at an alarming rate.
Okay, so again, let's come back home. You possibly have read the president's speech at UNGA, which is his farewell speech, because he will not be having the opportunity of going there next year.
Yes.
And so, what are the high points of the President Buhari's speech at UNGA 77?
Yes, I think the president raised very, very salient points. He was able to use the opportunity of the UNGA to press certain key issues that has been very, very dear to the African people, not just Nigeria. And what are those key issues? The issues of insurgency. Insurgency is ravaging a lot of African communities. Whether you call it Boko Haram, whether you call it terrorism, whatever you call it, this has been destabilizing a lot of African countries. And not just Africa, even most of the third world countries. And there was no better place to have talked about that. Secondly, he talked about the role Nigeria has played in trying to stabilize Africa. I think Mr. President was very bold enough to tell the world that we are also trying within our own limited, within the limits of our own power, to try to help other countries in the developing world. And he mentioned our role in Gambia. He mentioned our role in Guinea-Bissau and Nigerian role in Chad. And to me, if you don't blow your trumpet, nobody is going to blow it for you.
Sure.
So Nigeria, he used the stage to say, look, we are trying. We are also providing leadership in Africa. Another very key point that he raised is the necessity for reforms of the United Nations. He joined other leaders, especially other African leaders, to call for this much needed reform. In fact, A lot of people are surprised that Africa, up till now, 60 years of the United Nations, is not in the Security Council of the United Nations.
But are we united about who to put forward? Because I remember when Muammar Gaddafi was alive, he was like, oh, yes, one Africa, and he was projecting himself as, then there have been called for South Africa, others have said it's Egypt, some have said Nigeria. There is no united...
I don't think there's any dispute, there's supposed to be any problem about that. Nigeria is clearly the choice. Not because I'm a Nigerian. Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa. Though some people say it's South Africa, some say, but I think Nigeria...
No, at least we have overtaken South Africa.
Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. Nigeria has everything. We have the oil, we have the natural resources. So Nigeria, I don't think the issue of which of the countries that we go should be the problem. Let the Security Council seat be considered to Africa. I have no doubt that Nigeria is not going to emerge. Yes, there will be a lot of gang up, but at the end of the day, if it is going to be addressed fairly and squarely and objectively, I think it will be in the interest of Africa to project a country like Nigeria to represent. And that is why, from all the speeches of not just President Buhari, from all the speeches of other Nigerian presidents at the UNGA in the last couple of years, you see that Nigeria has been providing a lot of leadership, not just to Africa, even the South Africa you talked about. We know the level of commitment we put into even the eradication of apartheid in South Africa. A time will come when Africa will sit down and look at all Nigeria's past contributions to the development, to the emancipation of this continent. And for Nigeria to have made Africa the centerpiece of our foreign policy, it is very, very instructive. Since independence, we fought for Namibia, we fought for Angola, we have always been at the forefront of ensuring that our African brothers' interest is protected. Then when we get to the Security Council, is it when we will now abdicate that responsibility? So I think...
Prof, don't forget the war of attrition between the Anglophone and the Francophone. Our Francophone brothers do not really see us in the light in which we see ourselves. I don't know. But
fortunately for us, no Francophone country is in the top three that is moving for them.
Yeah, I understand, but when it comes to voting, as it has happened in sports, you know what we have suffered, the backlash, despite all our contributions. Small countries like, I don't want to mention it so that I don't enjoy. But you know what has been happening between Anglophone and Francophone countries. When it comes to voting, even at the level of African Union, you may find out that many of these Anglophone countries may not be backing Nigeria for that top seat. They may go to Egypt. They may put...
Yes, like I said, Nigeria, it depends on how we play our cards. I don't think the issues between Anglophone and Francophone, as the case may be, in this instance might not be a serious issue because South Africa is not Anglophone, and certainly Egypt.
But remember what happened when Obasanjo wanted to, when he contested for the Secretary General of the United Nations. What happened? Yet you have a Boutros Ghali from Egypt. Imagine later as the Secretary General of the United Nations. So I'm just talking historically.
Yes, that is the different kettle entirely. the international community was also involved in that process. That threw up Boutros Ghali. But in this case now, if the Security Council is brought to Africa and Nigeria, African countries should naturally know that, because the Security Council is not just where you are just going there. Look at Russia, is a member of the Security Council or the Russia Federation. Yeah. China, they are not there just because anybody is playing politics. No, they are there in their own right as regional leaders in Eastern Europe. China is there. So it's not something that you are, Africa, we will advise Africa as international relations expert. It's not just pushing somebody there to just go and sit down there and be drinking tea or just be clapping for the other people. No.
But Prof, let's look at other high points of President Buhari. He said something about credible elections in Nigeria.
Yes.
That he was going to leave a legacy of credible elections. Do you see him fulfilling that promise? Today marks the beginning, the commencement of political campaigns for 2023. Incidentally, do you foresee that he will outshine his brother, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, in giving Nigeria the most credible election in 2023? Because he has said this repeatedly. He said it on the June 12th when he addressed the nation on the occasion of the Democracy Day. He has said it at the United Nations again. So do you see him delivering on that promise?
I have no reason to doubt the commitment of the president to free, fair elections. He made the point at the United Nations, floor of the United Nations General Assembly, which is very, 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 very instructive. He uses the occasion of that Hunger 77 to reassure the international community of his commitment to not just exit peacefully, but to also conduct a very, very transparent, free and fair democratic process. I have no reason to doubt Mr. President. If you look at the primaries of the political parties that happened some months ago, even in his party, the APC, you saw what transpired, which led to the emergence of Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. So I am very, very hopeful that with the elections in Osun and the elections in Ekiti that just happened, and even the one in Edo before then,
and Anambra,
and yes, I think, and the reforms that have taken place, the electoral reforms, the use of beavers, the signing of the current Electoral Act, and others. If there's a pointer, there's a key pointer to the fact that Mr. President is committed to a successful change of government come 2023. And there's no other better place to have amplified this than at the floor of the United Nations General Assembly. Yes, there are challenges. There will be challenges because, you know, especially issues of vote buying and other things, which
and violence
has been one of the bane of our democratic process. But by and large, I think, and I do sincerely believe that the president will not interfere in the elections that is going to happen in 2023.
But what will it take? One thing is to make commitments. Is he in charge? Can he dictate to INEC? Can he dictate to security agencies, to politicians who are desperate for power? Can he actually, what do you see him? What role will he have to play to make that commitment come to fruition? Very briefly, because we need to go on a short break.
The number one role is, one, INEC must be provided all the necessary logistics. That is what he must provide. Secondly, he must ensure the independence of INEC. And how will he ensure the independence of INEC? he must not interfere in their activities. Thirdly, he must ensure, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, he must ensure the neutrality of the armed forces and the security agencies. Once this is done, then we will have a very, very free and transparent election.
Okay, we need to go on a very short break now, pay some bills, and then we'll be back for the concluding thoughts on this Guard 77. Please do stay tuned. Yeah, we are back on the beat. So, Dr. Ade, you said the president must be very dispassionate, provide all the logistics to INEC to be able to deliver on his core mandate. Also, should not interfere, should guarantee the independence of INEC by non-interference, as well as reining the military and the police from being abused. But what about the political class that wants to win at all cost? You mentioned issue of vote trading. You also know that we have history of electoral violence, and that has been cited as being of great concern as we even start campaigns today. So much so that Nigeria Broadcasting Commission and INEC on Monday this week had a parley with broadcast stations about how to report on political campaign because of inflammation of passion, fake news and hate speeches and all of that. So how will the president prevail on this? Do you foresee him having a parley with all the presidential candidates and trying to persuade them to play by the rules? We also have seen the National Peace Committee planning to have a peace accord signed by tomorrow. That's to ensure that these candidates play by the rules. Do you think this is highly desirable, and what impact would this make?
Yes, the Peace Committee has been there, right from the various transitions from Jonathan and the one before Jonathan from Yaradua. So the Abdul Salami Committee has been doing a very, very great job. They've tried to stabilize the Nigerian democratic space, especially during the general elections. I foresee the committee still playing a major role going forward. Now, the president as the commander-in-chief, it's not as if he's going to be directly involved, but like I said, making the security agencies to be neutral, to do their job. He has to give them marching orders. Anybody who tries to foment trouble must not be shielded by the security agencies. He must insist on that. And those who are arrested or found culpable, they have to be dealt with according to the law. So once that is in place, everybody will
sit tight.
Will sit tight, and we'll have a seamless process. The president cannot be everywhere. He can give the marching order to the Inspector General of Police. He can also direct the heads of DSS and others that are going to be involved in providing security to be on the top of their game. He can't do more than that. And he cannot say that because maybe he's in a political party, he's going to now use state apparatus to now
and resources
to now influence what is going to happen. Once he doesn't do that, but people are not going to complain. I am not foreseeing any serious violence in the coming elections. I'm not foreseeing it. It's good for people to be sensitized. Once the right things are done and there are no manipulations, I don't foresee the snatching of ballot boxes again because.
But did you know somebody went to court to challenge INEC and try to prevent INEC from using beavers? In Imo State, there is a case instituted by
No, I heard about the case, but the judiciary should sit up on, and throw up such frivolous case out of the courts. A law is a law. It has been passed. It has been used in certain places, and Nigeria are looking forward to the use of, because the whole process of electioneering in Nigeria is always it's only the accreditation and voting and collation that has always been problematic. Once these things are done the way it should be done, it will reduce incidences of violence. It will give credibility to the entire process. And I think in the run down to the 2023 election, if all the mechanisms that are put in place, if it is followed, I don't think there will be any.
So as we are on home stretch now, let's look at France and its colonies. What is responsible for the strained relationship between France and its colonies? So much so that some of the countries from previously colonized are calling the bluff of Emmanuel Macron and his policies in Africa.
Oh, yes, you see, when you, in every relationship, when you try to abuse that relationship, even in your family, when you begin to beat your children to stupor, you begin to quarrel over things that you don't need to even shout about. At a point, the children can even stand up to you. So I think what is happening, what is playing out is that France have continuously have an overbearing influence on these colonies, and they are seeing that they have not been able to get any meaningful development. They have not been able to untie themselves from the apron string of Paris, and many of them are now beginning to say, look, we cannot put our destiny into your hands forever. Look at our neighbors in the Anglophone area. Look at Nigeria. Look at South Africa. Look at Rwanda. Look at other countries. They are making little progress because of the way the relationship with Britain and their colonial masters. So they are beginning to see that this type of relationship they have been having with Paris has really not been helping most of them. In fact, that they are even the issue of CFA, tying the whole of their currencies to the French franc, has really not even translated into improving.
But French itself has accepted to euro as its own means of exchange. So
yes.
Why will they want the African colonies to still be using CFA?
Yes, like I told you, it's like a master-servant relationship that they have been having. So I think the French countries, the Francophone countries, are beginning to realize that going forward, the only way for them to attain meaningful development is to also try to maintain some level of independence, to also make to be able to address some of their internal problems without necessarily relying on France, and
okay.
So that's what is playing out.
Okay, let's look quickly at Nigeria. Just very recently, like a couple of weeks ago, we lost the Queen of England, Elizabeth II, and that same week that the Queen died, there was a transition between Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, as Prime Minister. So we have two new leaders of United Kingdom, and Nigeria happens to be part of the Commonwealth of Nations, 54 of them. What does this portend for us in Nigeria? The change of leadership, both at ceremonial and an official level in UK. What does this portend for Nigeria and its foreign policies?
I don't think there will be a radical change from what we used to know. Whether it's Truss or King Charles now, I don't see a major shift in Britain, in the UK, a relationship with Nigeria. One thing I know about the West is they have very strong institutions, and these institutions endures. And with this change coming in, don't forget that Prince Charles have always been has been groomed to attain this leadership, and he has even in the last few years of the Queen, Charles has been superintending, helping in managing the Commonwealth. So he's already experienced, and so I don't expect any radical change from.
Italy just had their election, and it threw up a female prime minister for the first time in the history of Italy. Do you see the wind of change? Is it because now we have a female prime minister in Italy? We are in UK. Of course, Angela Merkel has left in Germany. But what does this portend for?
No, I think it sends a clear message that gender is not a barrier, and it sends a clear message that even the female gender can attain whatever level that, if properly educated, if properly given the same chance, they could also aspire to the highest office anywhere in the world. And it's a clear message for those of us in Africa. It's a clear message that we should take the issues of the girl child very serious. We should not do anything to want to deprive our girls or our females from attaining whatever heights they need to attain. I think the Europeans have really shown us that they have been able to enhance women participation in the political process in their various society.
Because of time constraint, let's look at the United Nations. What kind of reform do you think can make the United Nations more relevant to contemporary governance systems across the globe?
Well, we have said it, the issue of inclusivity. The United Nations as it is now, especially the most powerful organ, which is the Security Council, it needs to be totally overhauled to give every part of the globe a sense. So the issue of veto power would need to be looked into seriously. A situation whereby 5 permanent members can veto all decisions should be revisited. I preferred a situation whereby more powers should be given to the General Assembly instead of the Security Council. If we are talking about democracy, which is number, then the General Assembly should have more powers than the Security Council. Other reforms that are very important is in terms of the multilateral finance institutions like the World Bank
and the IMF
and other
African Development Bank.
They need to be for the UN, especially the World Bank. They need to look at them again. The Bretton Woods institutions. They need to look at them again instead of the domination of America and France in those 2 institutions, or the Europeans in those 2 institutions. They need to be more global in outlook. They need to be more receptive to countries in the developing world. Those are the key reforms. The United Nations is good. It has, like I said earlier, it has attained some level of achievement. And once these reforms that people are agitating, countries are agitating, especially we third world and the developing countries, once this are attained, don't forget that most third world countries have some axe to grind with with the composition of the United Nations as it is. They see it as an oppressive body
Exactly.
Against the developing countries or the third world countries. And they have been, the third world countries have been agitating for a lot of things. The United Nations have not been able to address issues of reparation, which a lot of third world countries are demanding as a result of slavery and colonialism in the past. They've not been able to, the United Nations has not been able to address the uneven imbalance between developed countries and the developing countries. The gap instead is widening.
But Doc, how will you react to the fact that Africa is largely underdeveloped because of lack of industrialization, lack of science and technology? Because I recall when we say, our civilization started from Africa, hieroglyphics, writing in Egypt and all of that. And then, my father, my great-grandfathers developed, they have their dingons, they have their, they have their textile technology and all of that. But it has remained at primitive level. Even the practice of agriculture has remained. But look at how was the Europeans and Americans, how did they manage to colonize us? If not for their superior, technology, which enabled them, they were able to build ships, they were able to transport themselves across the globe. We talk of Mungo Park, Landers Brothers and all of that, and then the superior firepower with which they subdue the colonies before they now started their means of administration. If not for that, so where do you think we will ever be able to achieve this global, competitiveness without science and technology?
Yes, there's no way we can attain development, we can compete in the 21st century without imbibing science and technology. And that is why with the globalization of the world now, you don't need to have all. You need to specialize in some. And then you can also, what you don't have, you get from other places, and what you have, you export to other people. So we have to get our priorities right. There's no way you can develop in this modern era without going into science and technology. Like I said, we must not go into telecommunication like every other person, but we have our own. For example, medicine, if we are noted for our herbal medicine and we are exporting it to the world.
Look at the Chinese.
Yeah, the Chinese acupuncture
and
Tianxi and some of these.
and they've invaded Africa. There's all manner of, even this ginger tea.
Yes.
That they come and buy very cheap in Kaduna here.
Yes.
They export it and produce us ginger tea.
So we might not, when we talk about science and technology or industrialization, we must not be in every field. If it is in car manufacturing and you have Innocent or you have some other factories that are producing some components of a car, we'll be making little progress. It could be in the area of agriculture.
But let's go back to issue. Issue raised by the President Buhari at Onga about the elongation of tenure by his African brothers. The fact that a number of countries are altering their constitution to allow for tenure elongation. We saw that happening in Guinea-Bissau, Alpha Conde and the rest, in Mali, Niger, in Rwanda, and a host of other countries. If they have a amended constitution, is it a crime to have, I mean, Zimbabwe at some point, I mean, not Zimbabwe, Uganda at some point even remove the term limit and said, hey, let him be there for as long as people want him. Do you think that this is a very good thing to do?
Yes, one of the basic tenets of democracy is periodic election. You set a term limit. After the expiration of the term limit, you go for assessment. And the assessment is the voting, whether what you are doing is right or what you are doing is wrong. That is one aspect, which is very important in a democracy. The second aspect is, if you've completed your constitutional term limits, you step aside so that another person and a new blood can be injected into the system. Well, that in itself is good, but we have also seen society like Russia, where Putin has stayed for quite some time.
And he kept returning himself in a dubious election.
Yes, and he kept returning himself. So we have seen that stability also has its advantage. It's not just having periodic election
or change of leadership
every 4 years.
I mean, somebody pointed out that Britain, UK has a 6 prime ministers in 4 years.
Yes.
Somewhat from Theresa May, Boris Johnson.
But the British system is somehow.
It's almost
because
autopilot.
The Queen still remains or the King still remains for a very long time, and he wields a lot of influence in governance. It's not just putting prime minister. Yes, prime minister runs the government, but there's still a monarchy at the top. Spain, there's a monarchy. So if you look at Europeans, their democracy, one can even argue that
should we be looking at monarchies?
No. You see, we imbibe the spirit of democracy here as expounded in the theoretical books, and that is why we talk about term limits and all these things. But when you look at the Europeans, they value the importance of stability, of stabilizing a particular, of stabilizing society, and that is why a lot of powers are still given to the monarchy. No ceremonial, they say, but it is the custodian of the institutions of governance. You understand? So for that they have a stabilized system, but that is not to justify if you came to power on the basis of spending 4 years. There is no justification for you at the end of the 4 years to want to manipulate the constitution to now extend the term limit. So there's really no justification as it's been done in Africa. And there's also no justification that a Paul Biya in Cameroon will stay over 30 years. There's really no justification. Other people should be given opportunity to showcase what they have to develop the country. So I am of the firm belief that if you have 4 years tenure and you have the second 4 years, which is 8 years, it's enough.
But there's a trend in Africa that I've observed, which is that many African countries have 5-year term, not 4 years. That those who have 4 years are not as many as those who have 5 years. Look at Kenya. It's every 5 years and all of that. Do you think Nigeria should alter its constitution to have 5 years of 2 terms?
I wouldn't even mind if it is reduced to 2 years.
Okay. I've been told by my producer that we need to round up. It's very interesting that I'm having this conversation with you. But let me allow you your final word on UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, SDG. What should we be looking forward to in future, post-Buhari for Nigeria?
Yes, I think that Nigeria should continue to provide its leadership role to Africa. Nigeria should continue to support the African Union, support the ECOWAS, support regional integration in Africa. And Nigeria should also engage with other parts of the world so that we can benefit from technology transfer, we can benefit from programs that will help enhance Nigerian economy and African economy. This world of today is the world of collaboration and partnership, and that's why international relations and diplomacy will continue to play a very, very prominent role in bringing the world together for the enhancement of mankind.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matthew Adoyi Omale, the head of Department of International Relations and Diplomacy based University here in Abuja. It's been wonderful having this discussion with you. Thank you very much. We do hope when next we call on you to weigh in on another issue of international dimension, you will oblige us.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to be here.
Do enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be back in a bit for the second and concluding segment of Development Focus with Jide Ojo on ITV. Do stay tuned.